Hi, my name is Natasha Watts, and I'll be your MC for the readings tonight. My co-editor, Rachel Delaney Kraft, and I were the editors of the anthology Wild, which was a finalist last year in 2021. Oh, yay. So check that out. On behalf of Colorado Humanities and Center for the Book, I would like to thank Book Bar for providing us with such a great venue for the 31st Annual Colorado Book Awards Finalist Reading Series. Thank you also to CBA sponsors Unite for Literacy and the Colorado Sun, with whom Colorado Humanities partners on Sunlit Sunday excerpts of Colorado authors' books. Yay. Tonight, I'm pleased to introduce you to 11 very talented writers, editors, and illustrators whose books have been named by Colorado Book Awards selectors as the finalists in the Anthology and General Fiction categories. The finalists from the Anthology category will read first, followed by finalists in the General Fiction category. We'll move quickly, keeping everyone to their time limits, and there will be a Q&A with each author after she or he reads. So, and I think Mary will kind of give you a signal if we know where Mary is. There she is back there. So, copies of all the finalist books are available for purchase tonight. You can ask finalists to sign your books afterwards, and please enjoy Book Bar's great snacks and drinks during and after the readings. Colorado Humanities has also sprung for some snacks, so please take this opportunity to get yourself something to eat if you haven't yet. Over there?
No, I was just pointing.
Okay. I know there's something here that looks edible. Our first readers in the anthology category tonight are Manuel Aragon and Roxanne Banks Malia, who will read from their book, All the Lives We Ever Lived, Volume 2. I'll give you a little bio. Manuel Aragon is a Latinx writer, director, and filmmaker whose work has appeared in Animally, and his short story, A Violent Noise, was nominated for the 2020 Penn/Robert J. Dow Short Story Prize for Emerging Writers. He is a Periplus Collective Fellow and lives in Denver. Roxanne Banks Malia oversees the Lighthouse Writers Workshop youth and community programs and also serves as the Colorado Poetry Out Loud State Coordinator. She has taught creative writing and literature in a variety of settings, and her poetry and essays have appeared in Cold Front Magazine, Copper Nickel, Cut Bank, Diagram, and elsewhere. Roxanne also lives in Denver. Come on up.
Thank you so much. I'm going to read a little piece, and then I'm going to have two of our participants in the anthology share their pieces. So, a community has a voice, a shared language only spoken between one another, shorthand and phrases that communicate a history that perhaps you are not aware of, words that let you know that ties run deep. If you're lucky enough to build a relationship with any community, to be invited in, they will share their stories. This is a sacred act. At Lighthouse, we are honored that so many communities have invited us in and shared their stories with us over the past 5 years. Tonight, we have two readers who are going to share those stories. So I'll call up Janice Olson and Mike Sindler. And Amanda Howard as well. Yes, sorry. Apologies. So we have three who will be sharing with us this evening. We will have Janice first, followed by Amanda, followed by Mike.
This is fitting because it is the month of May. May Tonka, white, pink, burgundy. Feel the gentle springtime breeze, luring honeybees, snowing crabapple blossoms to fool other pollinators.
Can you hear me? Yes, okay. Barely? Really? Well, I'll talk louder. Yeah, okay. I don't do well with microphones, I'm sorry. This is called The War. They moved my mother to the locked ward a few months ago after the second time she tried to catch the next train home to New Orleans. She made it out to the parking lot that time, though they caught her before she tried to cross Sheridan Boulevard in her wheelchair. "What's your mom's deal with New Orleans?" one of the nursing assistants asked me. "Did she just have a really good time there once or something?" I smiled, deeply offended at this reduction of our city to a mere tourist destination, and told him that's where our family is from. I peeked through the small square window and the locked door before tapping in the code. Sometimes there is a group of dementia patients directly on the other side of the door, like detritus washed up against a grate, and I have to ask a staff member to distract them while I slip past. But today there is only one woman pawing at the door like an extra in a zombie film, and I am able to get by. The walls of the hallway are an unsettling pinkish beige, decorated with word art urging the residents to dream, believe, and imagine, advice which for dementia patients seems at best unnecessary. My mother's room is furnished a reminder of childhood with a dark wood dresser that my grandfather made and 2 armchairs from my grandmother's house. The ancestral photographs in ornate gilt frames covering the wall opposite my mother's bed were also my grandmother's. Sometimes I ask my mother about them, and she is still able to rattle off their names, as well as their relationship to her and salient anecdotes. There's a bulletin board by her bed with crisscrossed ribbons securing smaller photographs, my father's high school pictures, some pictures of her and her sisters as children, and some of me and my siblings. Comfortable chairs are scarce here, and residents often nod off in the armchairs. But today my mother is alone, asleep in bed with her glasses on and her mouth open, up to her chin in blankets. I've brought coffee, which gives me the right to nudge her awake, and I adjust the bed to the proper angle, ignoring the armchairs. I pull the wheelchair next to the bed and feel the seat briefly, something I learned to do months ago when I sat in a pool of urine. Then sit down, resting my feet on the bed frame and my elbows on my bent knees. After pleasantries and a few sips of coffee, she notices the bulletin board and asks what the pictures are, although we've talked about them a few times a week for over a year now. I disentangle one from the ribbons and show it to her, my father's high school class. "I think that's junior year," I say. "Look, only 4 boys in a class of 25. "That was during the war," she says. "Yes, I suppose the boys were all working." "I don't remember much about the war," she says, and I blink. She has always been able to tell her stories of World War II, even now that she can't form new memories. "Well, let's see," I say, setting the picture aside. "You remember the margarine, having to color it?" Their housekeeper, Anna, used to grab whichever of the 3 sisters was unlucky enough to go near the kitchen at the wrong time and make her mash the gelatin capsule of artificial color evenly into the white oleomargarine so it would look like butter. It was hard work, and they all tried to duck it. She doesn't say anything, holding her coffee cup in both gnarled hands to warm them. "And were there air raids," I prompt, "in New Orleans?" This is another story she's told many times. "Drills," she corrects me. "You used to tell yourself they were only drills," which they were. "So what did you do? Just turn out the lights?" "And get someplace safe." "Where did you go?" I ask, interested. This has never come up. "The pantry?" "I don't remember," she says slowly. "We didn't have cellars in that part of the country, of course." My grandmother was deaf and had oral hallucinations during her own dementia. She often banged on my bedroom door and screamed at me to turn out the light. Couldn't I hear the air raid sirens? But she never tried to get us to go downstairs and huddle in the pantry, so maybe it was only lights. "I got a soldier's name to write to," my mother is saying. "I think I wrote him 1 letter." "Did you knit?" I ask, having read of such things. "Oh, I knitted. I don't remember ever finishing anything." "Well, you were awfully young." Then I say, remembering, "And Grandma and Grandpa took you to see the soldiers boarding." I immediately regret saying this. Most of her war stories are tales of childhood adventure with just enough danger or privation to be interesting, but this story always makes her sad. Soldiers from all over were sent to Camp Plochet up the river before they went overseas. One day my grandfather came home with the news that thousands of soldiers were going to board a ship at the foot of Canal Street that evening. My mother's family ate dinner early and lined up with the rest of the city to see them off. Neon was prohibited for the duration of the war, so it was eerily dark as all the people silently watched the endless lines of boys in battle dress trying to be brave. "It was just marching feet, that's all you could hear," she says, "and people telling their beads," this is a New Orleans expression, meaning saying a rosary, "and crying. Even some of the boys were crying." Her voice catches at this last sentence, and I quickly look for a picture to cheer her up, settling on one of her childhood dogs, Soot. Soot was a good dog, she says. I prompt her to tell how she and her sisters used to dress Soot up in doll clothes, how Soot ran out to play fetch still dressed, how the pink skirt fluttered as he jumped to catch a ball my grandfather threw. And then her coffee is finished, so I take the cup and she nods off again. As I'm easing off her glasses, she wakes up long enough for me to ask if she wants the blinds closed. She says no, she likes the light. It's cheerful. Thank you. And now Mike Sindler.
Wow, was that great or what, folks? You know, if y'all look at the anthology, you'll see it's made up of different groups that Lighthouse has done. And the first one that really started as part of the community outreach is Hard Times. And Amanda and Janice and I are all part of Hard Times. And I just can't even begin to tell you how important this program has been to me. It changed my life. It uplifted my life. It has been something incredibly special. That being said, being a poet, it's been 2 years since I wrote this, so of course it's been revised since it's been published. And I'll do this one. Color my world. First, color my world with the invisible, the essential, the incorruptible. Grab the widest of brushes and dip it deep into compassion, swirling it until every bristle is saturated. Make wild, sure strokes across the background of being. Cover it thickly, a viscous gesso, grounding all that will float and flow upon its surface. Let it dry slowly with the warm breath of love, freeing vapors of longing, rising and disappearing into waning clouds of thought. Sand it gently with empathy until its soft, smooth surface contains no crevice, crack, or outcropping in which the dusty particles of doubt may find purchase. And then, color my world with all shades of human, every hue born from every clime. Color my world with the cross-pollination of lovers who leave convention behind. Color it with the shape and shade of every tribe. Color it with strands and curls and ringlets. Color it with fuzz and stubble and wild cowlicks. Color it with eumelanin and femelanin, with freckles and tans and birthmarks. Color it with rashes and sunspots and scars, with albinism and vitiligo. Color my world chocolate, saffron, annatto, and peach. Color it oat, wheat, cumin, pecan, and chickpea. Color it delicious. Color my world raw umber, burnt sienna, burnished copper, and dimpled bronze. Color it smooth amber and saturated coral. Color it pale chalk, glimmering sand, and fragile rust. Color it hard and strong, soft and malleable, cold and warm, and always beautiful. And then, color my world with every chroma, every pigment of plant and plumage. Color it deep forest and shocking chartreuse green. Color it swaying poppy, slithering salamander, and fluttering cardinal red. Color it bold sunflower and tart citrus yellow. Color it ripe mango, darting goldfish, and roaring tiger orange. Color it resting robin egg, scampering scarab, fluttering morpho wing, and waving water blue. Color it drooping wisteria, plump grape, and slow snail purple. And then color it striped and spotted and spiked and rounded. Color it subtle and brilliant. Color it pastel and iridescent. Color it contrasting and complementary. Color it microscopic and vast. Color it wisdom and passion. Color it intellect and faith. Color it action and thought. Color it kaleidoscopic. Color it a rainbow encircling the horizon. Color it everything. Color it now, but most of all, with every stroke, every movement, every touch, color it, love. Thank you.
We're going to open up the question and answers. So if Manuel, where'd he go? Is Roxanne here? Is it will just be you? Do you want the contributors to also take questions? Yeah, fabulous contributions. Thank you for that. So if you have a question, you can raise your hand and ask it, and then I'll ask whoever's up at the microphone to repeat it so that we can get in the recording.
Oh, okay. All right. I have a picture.
Any questions? Okay. We can sit down. Oh. Jenny.
So how did you select what pieces were going to go in the anthology?
So the question was, how did we select which pieces were going to go in the anthology? So we had participants from all of our community engagement programming submit their work over a 3 to 4 month period. And then Roxanne and I, most participants submitted, say, 2 to 4 pieces. And we, along with 3 volunteers, scored all of the pieces and tried to select one from each contributor. And so I think everybody got a piece in the anthology. Any other questions? Okay, now we'll sneak away. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And for those not familiar with Lighthouse Writers Workshop, does really great things. It's so cool to hear some of the work that comes out of that. All right, so next we will hear from some of the editors and contributors of the collection Tell It Slant, an anthology of creative nonfiction by writers from Colorado's prisons. It was edited by Julie Rada, Susie Q. Smith, and Elijah Null. Elijah is completing his PhD in literary studies at the University of Denver. He has taught ESL, English, and humanities at the high school and college levels, and taught courses with the Prison Arts Initiative at DU. Contributor Mary we're gonna clap for everybody. Contributor Mary Dolfemeyer recently came on board as DU Prison Arts Initiative's program assistant. Mary is a dynamic performing artist and was recently released from La Vista Correctional Facility. Representing the DU Prison Arts Initiative program is Dan Manzanares, who is the initiative's Development and Communications Manager. He also serves on the Denver Commission on Cultural Affairs.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for coming out tonight. Congratulations to all the other finalists. I wish you all luck. I want to say thank you to Colorado Humanities for the honor of being here tonight, as well as Book Bar for opening their house this evening. Thank you. The DU Prison Arts Initiative generates creative and collaborative learning experiences that enrich the lives of people who are incarcerated and shift the conversation about prison. As part of DU's commitment to the public good, our programming opens dialogue between incarcerated people and their communities. We empower individuals to see themselves as leaders capable of creating meaningful change both inside prison systems and beyond. And now I want to introduce one of the editors for the anthology, Tell It Slant, who's going to tell us a little bit more about the project. Let's welcome Elijah.
Hello. So typically DU Pi likes to work in person in the facilities. This particular project is a collection of flash fiction and nonfiction, flash nonfiction primarily, that came from a course that we taught at the height of the pandemic. So you can ask me during the Q&A. It was entirely via correspondence to 160 students in 11 different facilities in Colorado, and then this anthology is the fruit of that course, which I taught, and then I'm an editor for the anthology as well. And so I'm going to read a piece by Jerry Martinez, and this is called Life and Death on the Prairie. We were a quarter mile from our great-uncle's cabin. Snow covered the world, a cold, wet mass that clung to the grooves of my shoes and turned my gloved fingers to icicles. Our great-uncle's ranch housed many animals, but for some unexplainable reason, we were enthralled with the cows. They were grand, lumbering beasts, black and white, just as every child knew they would be. We decided to follow them just like little hunters intent on closing the distance. Could we pet them? Maybe ride them? Our mom would be so surprised if we came back riding them. Our minds were wild with unlimited possibilities. The closer we got to the cows, the quicker they sped away. Were they afraid of us? 4 small boys aged 5 to 10 with long dark hair cascading down our backs hunched low, stalking. A testament to our ancestors. Maybe something in their bovine genome harkened back to a primeval time, hunters and the hunted. I wanted to call out to them, don't be afraid. Our people hunted buffaloes, not cows. But why would they listen to me? We were stalking them. An hour of freezing misery and a lot of, I'm cold, can we go? Later, we hadn't gotten any closer. Our ancestors would be disappointed. That's when I came up with a brilliant idea. If we cross the frozen river, we can get in front of them, climb a tree, wait for them to pass under and jump down on them. I looked to my brothers to see what they thought. I found no dissent. The river wasn't wide, about 20 feet, but how deep was it? We had no idea. We had watched the cows cross the ice, so it had to be safe, right? We scrabbled down the embankment, snow heavy and wet, stole its way into my gloves, over the tops of my shoes, and down the backside of my pants, but we made it. We were on the river. The ice was a slick sheet of frosted glass that we fought to keep our footing. I had found a large stick and began prodding the ice. If it was too thin or rotten, my stick would punch a hole. Like a World War II soldier with a mine detector, I swept and tapped the ice, trying to find the safest way across. Don't go past this point, I declared as I punched a hole into the ice. It's too thin. About halfway across, my older brother decided to test the ice I had told him was too thin. He strode past me with all the bravado a 10-year-old could possess. See, it's good. The ice cracked a warning like thunder, then gave way. The black depths took my brother, swallowed him whole. He was gone. I was only 2 feet away. I could have, should have, reached out and pulled him back. I didn't. I froze. I froze like the ice, cold and immobile. I stared at the hole, unable to do anything. I never heard my little brother say anything. Ice doesn't have ears. Bubbles burst from the hole. His last breath, his last breath. Terror cried in my mind as tears of ice froze to my cheeks. Water shot from the churning hole. I saw him flailing. He burst from the grip of the watery grave, fell back on the ice trying to find purchase. Again, I was supposed to help. I didn't. I was ice, a sculpture of a coward. The ice rejected his weight and gave way. He sunk, again disappearing below the ice, his cries cut off by the life-stealing cold of the water. The world held its breath as the wind cried with a coward. I cried for my brother lost under the ice. I also cried for something inside myself, something I didn't know if I would ever find again. Once more the water churned. My brother shot from the hole, a testament to his will to live. He grasped, searching the ice for anything or anyone to help him. Finally, my body gave way to will. I dropped to the ice, taking my brother by the arms. I pulled him from the maw. He was so cold he could barely move. We took off his soaked coat and gave him all our dry ones. We walked back to our great-uncle's cabin, no cows, no parade, just 4 freezing boys, happy we were alive. And our next reader is Mary.
Thank you all so much for being here. Before I begin, I just really want you guys to know this is a very special moment for me, especially I was recently released from incarceration, so This is a pretty big moment for me, and I just am very, very thankful that I get to share it with you. I'm a little bit nervous, but especially to DU Pi, that program has changed my life, bringing creative nonfiction and art-based programs into prisons, because I'm telling you it works. I know it works in writing and getting in touch with who we are and humanizing prison. That's the ticket all the way. So this is called Everything. Dying sun burns in the night. I watch it glow and it's so hard for me. Every sunset reminds me of him, and while I try to find solace in knowing the same sun sets and the same moon rises, the pain is still very real. He is the love of my life, my soulmate, my partner, yet miles hold us apart. How can I be complete without him? Speaking darkness out of spite, coercion, and then caving in, wrap me in bitterness. It's so easy to get lost in the soft verbiage of injustice in here, but we can either become better or bitter. The choices fall on our own ears. What is my truth? I feel the loss, the humiliating sense of no control. I cause my own suffering because I cannot hold back from wanting him. Give it up. I'm complacent, just enough to escape it. Heretics wouldn't faze me. Lucid trust. I don't want it. The feelings came in waves, and the only way to deal is to compartmentalize them and save the pain for later when I can be alone with my tears and my thoughts. He never leaves my mind. I never expected to find love behind walls and razor wire. I was destined to be what I was told that I was, a criminal, less than worthy according to society. Palms are rough when you're honest. His hand to lose and wonder why, your pressure in increments like a slow-moving coupe. Light words off of a dark cell wall, a candle in no man's land. Love found, but yet still lost over the strings of time. Distance means nothing when someone means everything. Memory's dissident when I am holding you. If I could only hold him once, I know I could sleep soundly, but then again, would it ever be enough? He is my foundation when everything falls apart. When I am misunderstanding, he catches me. He is everything. Thank you.
Anyone has questions for the contributors about the Prison Arts Initiative, about anything else that you're involved in? Very.
You can ask me anything if you want. You can ask.
No?
No?
I'm gonna ask a question of every single person.
Yeah, you have to now.
Are you gonna keep writing?
Absolutely. I love it.
What are you
What am I going to do next?
with your writing?
With my writing? You know, I don't know. There's so many different directions, and I'm still figuring out who I want to be, and being sober and being in this new environment, I'm going to keep writing. And I don't know what it's going to look like, but I know it's going to be amazing, for sure. Yes.
And if you can repeat it in the microphone, just for
Yes.
you guys. But for the Prison Arts Initiative, the virtual version, how is that different than in the past, and what were the difficulties that you guys faced? Were you part of the virtual? Yeah.
Yeah.
Whoever wants to answer.
Well, I'll talk about the process, and then you can add
Yeah.
on to that. So internet access is not so easy to come. What is the virtual version like is the question. Internet access is not so easy to come by, so this is what it looked like. Me and Susie Q. Smith, the collaborator who taught the class with me, we recorded the lectures. They were burned to DVDs. They were sent in the mail to the facilities. The facilities played them on the closed-circuit TV at each facility, and then the students would they would handwrite their assignment, and they would take it and give it to some staff. Staff would scan it, upload it to Google Docs. We would access it. We would type out our response. The staff would then print out that response and deliver it to each student, repeat that every week for 12 weeks. It was a monster of organization, which I did a little bit of. There were other people that did much more, Julie Rada mostly. So that, in terms of the mechanics, that's how it worked. But we felt it was important to figure out, so.
Yeah, I'd like to add to that. So especially on that end, it sounds like a lot, and it was. But from our perspective, when you're locked in a cell for 23 hours a day, 8 by 10, 23-hour lockdown, can't go anywhere, to know that that much effort and work was put in to have value for us was just monumental. And we thank you guys so much for that. But for us, they took down all programming. There was no gym, there was no yard, there was nothing. And we only had this little glimpse of what the world was, right? Because we had the news, which we all know that can be not good, right? So it was really scary. And so to have this one program And to find a way to do it virtually was really impactful. And when we would get our feedback from our work, it was very personal, and it wasn't just this blanket, good job, and this is great. Like every single one, and like they mentioned, there's how many people? 160
So there were
people.
There were 12 different responders responding to the course. So I
Yeah.
just did one facility, and then there were 11 others.
Yeah, so it was a lot, but it was really great. We loved it. You want to add? No? Kill me.
Just, going forward, as you say, it has been absolutely nothing, just shut down, nothing, go to the yard, but even as it does open up a little, it's still very close. There's still so little to do. Do you all see, in addition to going back to some of the other things, retaining this, using these things that you've recorded and letting those prompts continue for prisoners in the future?
Yeah, so the question is about, now that COVID is kind of, settling? I don't know, what is it doing? Who knows? It's spiking again, I don't know, who knows? Fifth wave BS. But, and what do we do now, and can we use kind of this, the model of the correspondence courses? I think for sure. I mean, I think that, it's another tool in the toolbox that we now had. One of the things that that the DOC doesn't really know much about technology, it turns out. So we kind of had to teach them about what Google Meets was, like what Zoom was, but they do Google for whatever reason, so we had to do Google Meets, and that infrastructure wasn't there. Now it is. So now this was the second of 3 12-week courses that we taught. And by now that infrastructure has been laid. And so I think that if there ever is a time, we just open up that toolbox again, and they're there and easier to apply. But we are back inside right now in person mostly, and it is it's where we want to be. Any other questions? Yes.
Mary, yes. Were you writing before you took the course, or were you already, that already an interest of yours, or did it kind of come about?
So the question is if I've always been a writer, and the answer is yes. That was something that my mother was a musician, and I took to songwriting at a very early age. Obviously, my life took a different direction for a little while, but I've always found that to be the thing that works for me, and that escape and that connection to other people and different stories. And so it's been a huge part of my life. And to have people that come in are like, wow, you're doing amazing. And when you're questioning those things, right? Because when you destroyed your life and harmed other people and victimized other people, and you're working through taking accountability for your actions, like I'll sit here all day and tell you I deserve to go to prison for what I did, 100%, and I own it all day. But how do you make that right? Well, by changing and by finding what makes you a better person and how you can help other people. In this program, like they not only cultivated that, but they gave me a job. If it's so crazy to be like, we're not only going to just do this for you inside, but we're going to help you when you get out. So, yeah, yes. Anybody else? No? All right. Thank you guys so much.
If I could ask for just one more round of applause for Marion for this awesome thing. So cool to hear the process and to hear those incredible selections. Very special. The third finalist and final that we'll be hearing from in the anthology category are the editors and contributors from Shadow Atlas, Dark Landscapes of the Americas, edited by Carina Bissett, Hilary Dodge, and Joshua Viola, and illustrated by Aaron Lovett. Carina Bissett is a writer, poet, and educator, working primarily in the fields of dark fiction and fabulism. Her short fiction and poetry have been published in multiple journals and anthologies, and she lives in Colorado Springs. Hilary Dodge is the author of several speculative short fiction stories, as well as 3 nonfiction books, including Gather Round the Table, Food Literacy Programs, Resources, and Ideas for Libraries. She has been published in online magazines, podcasts, and print anthologies, including Pseudopod, Space Squid, Hellbound Books, and Hex Publishers, and she lives in Colorado Springs. Joshua Viola is a Denver Post best-selling author, 5-time Colorado Book Award finalist, and the owner of Hex Publishers. He lives in Westminster. Aaron Lovett has been published by Aftershock Comics, Tor.com, the Denver Post, and Spectrum Fantastic Art 22 and 24. His Nightmares Unhinged cover art was licensed by AMC for their hit TV show Fear the Walking Dead. Aaron lives in Westminster. Thank you. Here we go.
Thanks for coming out. I'll keep this brief. Carina is going to be doing a reading, I think, as well, potentially as one of our contributors. But thanks, everybody, for coming out, on this nice, warm Colorado summer evening. Appreciate you making it out here. Thanks to the Book Bar for hosting us, Colorado Humanities. And congratulations to everybody in all of the categories for being a finalist for the Colorado Book Awards. And also, this year's extra special because a number of my friends have been nominated in other categories as well. So even though, despite them being friends, they're not here, congratulations to Stephen Graham Jones, Carter Wilson, Mark Stevens, and then my enemy, Mario Acevedo. But Shadow Atlas was a great project to work on. Thrilled to work with co-editor Carina Bissett. Hillary could not make it tonight, she unfortunately. But I wanted to add, Shadow Atlas was my 9th anthology. Every anthology that I put together has featured artwork. That's been a big focus on my part. Presentation is really important. I'm an artist. I worked in video games. Aaron Lovett, who's one of the nominees for this project, he created 49 original illustrations for this book, including maps, 2 covers. So there's the dust jacket cover, and then there's also a separate cover underneath. And there's also a flip book that's in the header that animates when you flip through it. So Aaron just totally unleashed on this project, and it's great. If you don't know him, he's very chatty and friendly. He's right over there, so please stop by and talk to him. And thank you to the contributors that are here as well. There are a number of them. If you get a book, you can get it signed. We have Brett Smith, who's right in front of me, my great friend Mario Acevedo, Warren Hammond, Angie Hodapp, and Carina, of course. Am I missing anyone? I hope not. And Aaron. So, Dean, the co-founder of Hex, is here as well. So thanks, everybody, and I'll pass it off to Carina.
Hello, everybody. Boy, that's very low. I'm tall-ish. Thank you. Perfect. Thank you. Hi, guys. This is a complicated project, so I'm just going to read the back cover and go from there. So, ancient people knew there were lands given over to shadow and spirit. The world is full of haunted places that exact a terrible toll on trespassers. Our forebears paid a heavy price to earn the wisdom and the warning they bequeathed to future generations. Time transformed their precious knowledge into superstition, but there are those whose hearts beat in rhythm with the past and whose vision is not clouded by modernity. Seeking to reclaim humanity's early secrets, the Umbra Arcus Society was forged. For centuries, this private league of explorers dedicated their lives to uncovering the older mysteries of the Americas. Armed with boldness and guile and equipped with only a compass, a journal, and devotion to truth, these adventurers braved cursed landscapes, dared unnatural adversaries, and exposed hidden civilizations. Many did not survive. None were forgotten. So this is the actual Shadow Atlas right here. It's a book, and so there's a meta-narrative that runs through this entire thing by this man who's part of the Umbra Arcus Society, and his name is Donald Sorensen. And so it's a wonderful, fun book. I'm going to read 3 poems to you. We have several contributors here who wrote short fiction. So this book contains short fiction. It contains their nonfiction pieces by members of the Umbra Arcus Society, and there is poetry. And then also Donald Sorensen has left some notes in his Shadow Atlas. So I have 3 pieces I'm going to read to you, and then we're going to bring Angie Hodapp up as well. Because of the time constraints, I'm only going to focus on poetry, but I hope that you'll come and talk to the people here who have written the short fiction. All right, here we go. The Shadow Atlas is a myth, a metaphor, a false memory, a mistake that has been raised to a stature no book can maintain. It instructs unreliably, proves nothing, improves less, lifts spirits falsely, sets no courses. It does not instruct, only entertains, yet declares it is the true way. It is like a dream, a wish, of shadowlands and shallow. We follow the maps therein, we have no others in hand, by Jane Yolen. The next piece I'm going to read is Blood of Angels by Al Goingback. This is one of the illustrations. All of the poems have illustrations by Donald Sorensen. And then the short fiction has other illustrations. So, Blood of Angels by Al Goingback, Tlaxcala, Mexico. In the state of Tlaxcala, east of Mexico City, in the shadow of the volcano La Malinche, the night belongs to Tala Wapuchi, shape-shifting vampire, eater of hearts. I practiced that one. When the weather turns cold or rainy, when the men have gone off to work and the village lies silent and dark, she separates her body and flies, disguised as a turkey or buzzard, or maybe even a tiny insect. Her glowing aura illuminates the blackness, her breath smelling faintly of blood. Soaring over simple adobe homes, she makes the shape of a cross, north to south and east to west, marking her prey in an unholy ritual. Young mothers sleep deeply, victims of her paralyzing mist, while the vampire sucks their babies with a long, needle-like tongue. In the morning, women grieve over infant bodies bruised and lifeless. 7 in one night near the village of Oxlotl. Small, sleeping mats left empty and forlorn. The doctors gather, shaking their heads, and upon death certificates they write, chupado por la bruja, sucked by the witch. And the newborns become nameless. No prayers said over petite caskets, no songs for their funeral processions or flowers for their graves. And the chill evenings will come again, mothers wrapping onions and garlic and serapes, placing metal scissors beneath meager beds, hoping to ward off Tala Wapuche, the vampire witch. This one has a note here from Donald Sorensen. He likes to annotate. January 19th, 2017. It was late in the evening on October in 1979. The date is lost in the desert of my remembrance. During that particular sun-scalded expedition, my guide led me to a precipice overlooking a parched and crumbled canyon, across from which he pointed out a singular cavern opening high above the volcanic face. We spent days, weeks searching for a way up, but although countless paths were trod, innumerable walls scaled, we were never able to discover the entrance itself. Low on supplies, we were forced to turn back. Donald Sorensen. Thanks. This is Iara. Oh, probably shouldn't do that because there's Iara. Catherine Riley, Brazil. Patriarchy held my head beneath swirling silt-rich waters, demanding submission. Never. My brothers could kill me, but not me them. My arm, a golden lance head with reflexes, my venom. I bested them in leadership, strategy, warfare. Everything except testosterone. My paya, my heart grew into legend, and I saw a new Tava, a new village within the water. The wrasses came, shimmering, coppery scales akin to my skin, blue magic glowing. Change, they thought. So I did. Not my sex as they could, but my mortality. Flung wide, my essence melded skin and scales, hair and algae. Burning, sempiternal purpose begins and I emerge. Iara. Strategic, antagonistic, vengeful, cunning, predatory. Hunting now fast and far, sniffing out semen, rising from Amazonian waters, droplets decorate darkened areolas. Scenting males I sing, luring lust to the river's edge. Drown, 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 on their knees. Obserate, expiate, drown, drown, drown. Come Kandura, piranha, payara, wrasse, little wolffish, feast and eat your fill. I have one short thing from Donald Sorensen, then we're going to bring Angie Hodapp up. So his notes on this, he had several. But this is July 11th, 1946. We are headed back to the civilization, hearts heavy with our loss. The translator is dead, so I have no way to speak to the Pullman. Those left of the crew, which number only 3 and myself. The past day is a blur, so fogged is my mind with her song. They dragged me from the water, pulled me up on the deck. I vomited mud and violent spatters on the planks. Although I am sure I must have seen her, her form is elusive to my mind, and all I can remember is the green glint of her eyes. Whatever horror I feel, however, is tempered by the certain fact that she allowed me to live. For surely, had she wished me dead, I would be so. Level 6 classification, highly dangerous, but possible to avoid, does not inhabit highly populated areas. Donald Sorensen. And then the last piece we have is by Angie Hodapp. This is the illustration here for this one. Here you go. You're tall too, so this should be fun.
Yeah, this is perfect. So I'm not a poet. I have a couple of degrees in English, so I was forced to study poetry. Sorry. No, but then I discovered sonnets, and I thought sonnets are kind of cool. They're really, formulaic, 14 lines, and they have to have a certain number of syllables and certain number of stresses and certain rhyming schemes. And I thought, how fun to take a romantic poetry form and turn it into a piece of horror. So this is called Invasion. It is a sonnet. She doesn't understand, she says, why they revised the maps, the globes, the compass rose, erased the only latitude she knows, and made the poles magnetic pulls obey the physics of the world from which they came. It's not, she thinks, as if they had a right to take her sense of touch, her sound, her sight, but still they did, and also took her name. Unanchored now, she wanders crowded crypts and temples where the overlord surveys the chaos he created, and she prays and cries, I'm sick, to everyone, to every life he stripped. You see her there? She cowers in the tomb and waits for Pook's destruction in the gloom.
All right, who has questions for the Shadow Atlas crew? I can ask the first one to get it started. My question was, who wrote and orchestrated all the Donald Sorensen bits?
That was if you read the book's introduction, Sean Eads and I wrote an essay about Donald Sorensen. So we kind of created the character. Sean isn't here; he had eye surgery, which I think was just an excuse to get out of having to speak in front of you. And then we took that and developed that, and Carina and Hillary took that character, developed it, and created the notes that follow, which ties into kind of the meta-narrative. And then we have an afterword by Alvaro Zainos Amaro, who follows up on the character of Sorensen 60-some years later. So it's a really cool book in the sense that we have all of the contributions from all the different writers and authors and poets of the short fiction and poetry. And then there's this meta-narrative that Carina, Hillary, and I worked on. So
It's fun. You don't often see a book that starts the table of contents on page 32, you guys. It starts with an FBI report, and then a letter denouncing this guy, and then the table of contents, because...
which all looks like a fun redacted FBI report. So
Yeah,
a lot of attention to detail with the interior. But yeah.
How many contributors did you have, and how did you put them all together?
God, I wish I knew the number. We have well over 30 contributors probably closer to 40. I've published, Hex Publishers is kind of known for anthologies. That's sort of the bread and butter, I guess you could say, of the press. Yeah, we have this really neat map that identifies all of the different stories across the Americas. We specifically wanted to reach out to writers, not only locally, there are a number of local writers here, but writers that have a background across the Americas. So yeah, with the reputation that Carina and Hillary and Hex has, we reached out to some people, and the great thing about working with writers is they make recommendations for other writers. We also had, this is the first time I've done an open submissions so we selected like, yeah, so around 8 or so open submissions, but most of it's invite only. Yeah.
I have to do a little addendum there, guys. So we had we wanted to make sure we had women representation. We wanted to make sure it wasn't just horror. There's fabulism, dark fantasy, these kinds of things. And then we really wanted poetry. And so when we opened it up, there's 3 different sections. It's North America, Mesoamerica, and South America. And we wanted to make sure we had representation. So one of our poets, Jimena Harado, her poem, Huechivo, was written in Spanish, and Julia Rios, who also has a story in this book, she translated it. So it's the first time that Jimena has been translated into American. And we also have Gerardo Horacio Porcayo, who is a cyber poet in Mexico City. We have contributors from Ecuador, Chile, Mexico. It's just really kind of amazing that we had all of these different kind of people. And so the short stories, we had 4 open. They all went to women, all went to people of color, except for one. People of color, LGBTQ representation was very important, and poetry was very important to us. So poetry, we had open submissions for poetry. We only had a set number, but we had so many great poems. Josh was like, we're just gonna take all the ones that we all like, we just took them all. So it became really loaded with poetry, yeah.
Any other questions? I thought I saw. Oh. What's that?
It was 8 months. Oh, so we started, we were going to make a regular anthology, and then we kept growing. We're like, oh, hey, by the way, there's 4 Umbra Arca Society, like, centers, and there's archivists, and we have a whole hierarchy, and one of them is here in Denver. But it was about 8 months on my end. How long?
Yeah, it was I want to say we started talking about it in
March?
No, it was like January, and we started around March, and then it put the book out end of November. So, yes.
So where did the whole idea for the entire concept of meta story come from, and what about the rest of the globe? What's coming?
Well, Hillary and Carina and I threw all kinds of concepts out for what the book could be. We didn't know. We just knew that we wanted to do sort of a horror-esque anthology, and we wanted to work together. So we had we had like Arctic horror, you know, in the vein of The Thing, which I'm sure would have made you happy, Brett. A lot of ideas. Carina actually proposed the kind of dark folklore concept, and then playing with the Americas. So that really was Carina's idea, and it really kind of blossomed from there. And then as we got into it, we all just spitballed and organically kind of came up with the meta concept to connect it. And then we're talking about Shadow Atlas, Europe and Asia, so we'll see what happens.
It was a lot of fun. Wisdom sits in places. That's an old saying. And so place, everything in here is based on place. So that was important to us. But that was fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, Europe.
Cool.
Huh?
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you, Shadow Atlas. Now we're going to hear from finalists in the general fiction category, so a little bit of a switch. Melissa Payne will first read from her book, The Night of Many Endings. Melissa Payne is the best-selling and award-winning author of The Secrets of Lost Stones and Memories in the Drift. Melissa has long been telling stories in one form or another, from high school newspaper articles to a graduate thesis to blogging about marriage and motherhood. Melissa lives in Conifer. Come on up. Oh, there she is.
Thank you for having me. Thank you, Colorado Humanities and Book Bar, for hosting us. And I'm so glad that General Fiction was with Anthology, because that was wonderful. I really enjoyed all the stories and the poems. Thank you for sharing that. Tonight I'm going to read a little bit from The Night of Many Endings. The Night of Many Endings is a story about 5 strangers stuck in a library during an epic Colorado spring snowstorm. I think it's a little on point for tonight. It's a story about stereotypes and perspectives and how we can never really know another person till we take the time to listen to their story. So this selection tonight is from Nora's perspective, who is a librarian who's lost her brother to addiction. And I'm trying to ignore the fact that I probably need reading glasses, so we're going to play with distance. The snow filled her flats, squishing around her toes, so that she felt like her feet were encased in plastic bags of freezing water. She tried to run around the side of the building, but her legs sank deep into the deep powder. It nearly came to her knees, and the part of her brain that wasn't reciting the signs of an opioid overdose registered the amount of snow with shock. She kept going, ticking the signs off in her head. No waking up or responding to my voice or touch. Is breathing, I really am having a hard time reading this. Is breathing low. Oh. Thank you, Leanne. Oh, this is amazing. Is breathing slow, irregular, or has it stopped? Are the pupils very small, lips blue? She felt her body shake from the cold. In this weather, her own lips were probably blue by now. How would she know if his were blue because of an overdose or the freezing cold? Snow wiggled under the tail of her shirt, slipped down the backs of her pants. She kept moving, ignoring her labored progress, and continued to grasp for any remnants from the class she took. Slow heartbeat, weak pulse. A chill ran down her spine that had nothing to do with the wet cardigan clinging to her skin. What if the guy wasn't breathing? Was she supposed to administer rescue breathing first? A knot tightened in the pit of her stomach, and her brain was suddenly empty of everything she learned in that class. The branches of the pine tree hung down like blackout curtains, blocking her view of the man inside. One branch bowed beyond anything that Nora thought was possible for wood, its pine needles resting on snow that had already piled heavy across the green needles, gluing its weight to the ground. Beyond the sodden branches, she could just make out his form, sprawled by the thick trunk, and her heart beat so fast it flattened her lungs. She was thrown back to the afternoon when she was 9 and had taken out the trash like she did every Monday. It hadn't been snowing, but it was so cold that her breath fogged the air, and she was so focused on that she didn't notice Mario sprawled in the brown grass. She'd screamed so loud the neighbor's dog started howling. "You saved his life," the paramedics told her later. She pushed through the stiff limbs and found herself sheltered underneath the tree, shoving thoughts of Mario out of the way to make room for the box in her hand and the man on the ground. The snow was shallower in the protected space, and she was by his side in seconds, her mind spinning with instructions. Lay the person on their back, remove device from the box, peel the plastic back. It had all seemed so easy in class, simple in a how to stop an opioid overdose for dummies kind of way. But it didn't account for a once-in-a-decade snowstorm, or fingers that had grown so cold she couldn't grip the small plastic corner of the package. She squeezed her eyes shut, shook her head. Calm down, Nora. She was getting ahead of herself. Check him first. He lay at an odd angle, slumped low against the trunk. Her brother's skin had been gray, his lips more black than blue, and she'd been sure he was dead. "They said I would have died if you hadn't found me," he'd croaked, later from his hospital bed. "I don't know what I'd do without you, Peaches." The man's lips were blue, his eyes were closed, so she couldn't see his pupils. She put 2 fingers to his wrist, but feeling his pulse beneath the frozen pads of her fingertips seemed an impossible task. So she laid her head against his chest, ignoring the moist stink that mixed with the wool fabric of his coat. His heart beat, but it was slow, too slow, she thought, and his breathing sounded like a wave that never quite reached the shore. "Nora?" She didn't turn. Vlado's voice was recognizable, even in a moment like this, where Nora was so far out of her league she felt like a stranger to herself. I need help. Her voice was hoarse. Okay. He was on the other side of the man's prone form in seconds. I think this man has overdosed. Her teeth chattered while she spoke. We need to lay him all the way onto his back. Vlado did just that, and Nora was grateful to not be alone anymore, even if it was with someone who knew less than she did about how to save someone from an overdose. She fumbled with the package, the tiny edge of plastic slipping from between her wet fingers, until she cried out with frustration, "Damn it!" Vlado took the box, opened it, pulled out the device, and without a word, handed it back to her. She fit it into her hand, thumb on the plunger, 2 fingers on either side of the nozzle that wobbled in the air. She didn't want this man to die, not when she could do something to save him. Why was he here, near death and alone? Did he have a wife who cried for him, a son? Did they scour the streets like she did, feel the futility of searching for one person in the widening hole inside their chests? She would not let him die, but she was terrified that she was too late. Thank you. Thank you. Any questions? Thank you. Okay. Oh. This story, it came from a couple of different places, but one in particular was a TED Talk. This kind of started here that I was watching. It was a librarian, and she was talking about how the opioid epidemic has affected public spaces, particularly public libraries. She had her own personal experience of parents who she had lost to addiction. Her whole life was about their addiction. And she lost them for many, many years until somebody, she said, gave them one more chance and they were sober. So when she was working in the libraries, and she saw like people overdosing in the stacks outside the library, it brought her back to her childhood and to her parents. And so she wanted to do something to help people. So she went and got herself educated and trained on how to use Narcan. And when people would ask her why do you do that? Some of these people are going to be back tomorrow. She said, well, somebody gave my parents that one last chance, and it made all the difference in the world, and I want to be that person for somebody else. And her story just gave me chills, and I wanted to create a character around that. The other part of this came from a library, actually, where all manuscripts are accepted. It's called the Brodigan Library. It was a fictional library at one point, now it's a real library. And I love the idea of all of us having something to say and a place where those words can go, regardless if it's traditional publishing, if it's, and so the Brodigan Library takes unpublished manuscripts, basically. And so a couple of ideas all came together for this particular story. Good. Any other questions? Yes.
So I love that you're working with libraries, love fictional libraries, but I was wondering, have you done any specific outreach for libraries since the book deals with libraries and librarians? Have you done any, is there any kind, do you have like, have you worked with any of the libraries? Have you worked out, I guess?
No, not any particular outreach, no, other than just speaking to book clubs and working with librarians who, may want to bring my book in, yeah. I know, I wish I had a better answer for that.
Like discussion questions for book club?
Oh, absolutely, yeah, yep. Great, thank you so much, and thank you to everyone here, and congratulations.
So we all have Melissa to thank for this weird weather this weekend. She cursed this. Next, Blake Sanz will read from his book, The Boundaries of Their Dwelling. Blake has published fiction in Ecotone, Puerto del Sol, Fifth Wednesday Journal, and elsewhere. His writing has garnered recognition from Zoe Trope, All Story, the Flannery O'Connor Award for Short Fiction, Bread Loaf Writers Conference, and the Sozopol Fiction Seminars in Bulgaria, and other conferences and residencies. Blake lives in Denver and teaches writing at the University of Denver.
Hi, thanks for having me. It's great to read in such good company. I echo Melissa's sentiments. It's really fun to read with people in the anthology category. It's such interesting work that's being done across different collaborative formats, and I really like that. Also, we've had a lot of stories and poems set in Mexico and one in New Orleans, and those are places that figure into this book, The Boundaries of Their Dwelling, which is a book of short stories that's interested in looking at people who find themselves not quite feeling like they're at home, even though they're in the place where they're from, because they have connections to other places. The two places that are most prominently featured in the book are Mexico and the South. And so I'll read a story here tonight called How to Live Domestically as an Artist. The artist in question is a Mexican guy. This is the 1980s, and he's living in Cuernavaca. Stash the unflattering portraits of your wife in the closet and clamp a lock on the drawer where she keeps the .44. Shift the armchair so the view angles down to the mountain road so you can see her coming home from work in the afternoons as you read the newspaper's account of the latest gallery openings. Feed your infant child twice after she leaves in the morning and carve out time near noon to walk across the calle with little Emmy to see Ma and Pa, who have bankrolled this apartment, this life. Cuernavaca is an art town, remember, and there's still a chance, after so many failures, to finally make something work. Remember that Mexico is your home. Forget the States. Forget your first wife. Forget your first child. Well, don't forget them, but stash them in the back of your mind. For this current situation, de repente, requires constant vigil. Forget that whole diversion that was the Caribbean. When the baby cries, pick her up and put her on your shoulder. Whisper to her in the Veracruzano accent of your youth and let her get used to your soft scent, your soft voice. Learn what puts her to sleep. The humming of the motor of the window unit, the running of water from the bathroom sink, but not the kitchen, that faint sigh you emit when you're near sleep yourself. Commit these to muscle memory. Say her name aloud. Emmy, mi Emmy, no mames, mi Emmy, cálmate mija porfa, mi Emmy. And know that this time, with this child, it will be different. Show her the paintings of her that you've been working on. The one projecting her in pigtails in 5 years' time, walking on the surface of a chlorine blue pool like Jesus. The one of her flying over the ravine behind your parents' house across the street. The one of butternut squash in a field of vetiver in the background. Emmy hovering over it with her freckled face and a look of complaint, a hand outstretched for the tamarind red candy of your youth. Smile as she watches you work. In the afternoons at your parents', let your mother coddle Emmy on the porch while you put together a swing set. Resist the urge to chafe at how your father oversees your work. Ignore his mumbles about how the top bar isn't level, how you're not bolting the chains correctly to the anchor, how he wishes he still had the strength so he could do it. Let him smoke at a distance and complain, and do not respond. Think of the times when he punched you out as a child because you asked por qué too many times, when he told you that you needed to stop being such a faggot with your art and grow the fuck up. That will remind you to laugh at his benign mumbles now. Things are much better today. Return to the apartment in the late afternoon to give Emmy a nap. When your wife's motorcycle pulls into the drive, hurry to the kitchen and put on a pot of water to boil for tea. As her heels click up the concrete stairs to the apartment's entrance, turn on the Mozart she likes, but play it low for Emmy's sake. Take out the loose leaf tea and tie an apron around your waist. Put on a smile when the door swings open. Be prepared for the best. Be prepared for the worst. Have the recipe book out, and for Christ's sake, make sure you've already bought the ingredients you need. When she walks in, smile and walk gracefully into her arms. Take the cues. When she ends the hug, you'll know what's next. If the mood is right, then pour you each a glass of tequila. If it's not, then wait for the kettle to whine and pour her tea. Either way, return to the kitchen and begin to shuck the corn for the elote. You learned in your last marriage the power that resides in being the cook. With the other wife, you hadn't been, and that had been bad. Besides, cooking provides a sense of pride if the things are good and a needed distraction if they're not. Slice the zucchini and tomato exactingly. Toss them in a bowl with the authority of a dictator, and your new wife will respond with a respect you've always thought you deserved. When she blithely chides your cooking technique at the too loud sizzle of the pan, at the introduction of vegetables, whatever you do, do not pick a fight. And after you've picked a fight, whatever you do not escalate it by calling her out for her drinking, as if you're not a drinker yourself. And after you've called her out, whatever you do not explain how, in the limo on the way to the church, your father pled with you to reconsider this marriage, how he said this second woman, this second wife, this second marriage, this would all go nowhere. And after you've blurted all that out, don't be surprised when the tequila comes out and she takes the knife out of your hands and starts to prep the calabacitas con rajas in her own way, which is to say, with a certain amount of vinegar. And don't be surprised if she keeps drinking through the process. Don't be surprised if you do too. Keep your seething, false sense of self-righteousness at bay. And when Annie wakes to the sound of the raised voices, be the bigger one and go take care of her without the first hint of an accusatory glance. And when you fail and give the glance, let her go by herself to take care of the baby. And while she's nursing, don't return to cooking, for she has reasserted control in that domain, and her preparation methods do not resemble yours. And when she returns to the kitchen, whatever you do not instigate further. Do not say anything about how hard it is being a stay-at-home artist and father. And when she laughs, do not denigrate her job. And after that escalation, allow her to approach, but keep your hands up. When she calls you out for sleeping with the neighbor, don't deflect like you always have, don't deny it. And when you respond by telling her that she's crazy, understand that what happens next is out of your control. There's a part of you that deserves it, you know, and a part of you that says that no one deserves anything remotely like this. As she heads for the bedroom with that steely look, know that she is going for the 44. Know that the lock will only give you a head start, for there is nothing that will keep her from it in this state. Walk silently to the open door and take to the steps. When you hear the crashing sound of the drawer being forced open, sprint to her motorcycle. When she fires the 44 out the window and hits the handlebars as you turn the thing into gear, punch the accelerator and don't look back. Don't look back. Don't look back. Thanks. Any questions? No, that's the only story that's in the second person. Yeah. That character recurs, the artist. Plotter or pantser? What's that? Plotter or pantser? I'm not sure. I didn't get that far in my own imagination, I guess.
What are your connections to the settings in these books, this very setting?
My dad and his whole family is from Veracruz, from Mexico, and my mom's whole family is from Louisiana. So I'm one of these people who feels sort of in between two places, and that was the inspiration for the book. Thank you.
The Guardian, the Los Angeles Times, and McSweeney's. Her work has been honorably mentioned by Best American Essays, the Pushcart Prize, and her mother. She teaches in the Mile High MFA program at Regis University and the Lighthouse Writers Workshop in Denver. Jenny lives in Denver.
Thank you. I have to admit, I actually live in Boulder, but I'm from Denver. Whenever anyone asks, I feel more Denver than Boulder. What an honor to be with all of you. So many people that I've known for so many years and I've either taught with or have taken my classes or have read your work or I've seen you around, and then new people too that I'm so happy to meet. Congratulations to all of you. My story collection, Mixed Company, it's a book of funny stories about people trying to reach across chasms caused by differences in race, age, gender, political beliefs, native language, disability, and form some kind of connection, love, friendship, or at least respect. These efforts often go awry, as in the story Local Honey that I'm going to read a little bit to you from. And that is about two white, aging hippie parents from Boulder who try to bond with their black teenage son by bringing him to a Wu-Tang Clan show in Denver. But all the stories show people trying to reach out from the limitations of their own experiences and to make an effort to understand other people. I grew up in Denver during the era of court-ordered busing for racial integration, and this immersed me in a variety of different cultures, languages, and neighborhoods. And most of these stories are inspired by that experience. These stories are fictional, but I also drew on various jobs I've had around Denver as a music critic, as an intern for concert promoter Barry Fay, as a tutor for CU football players, as a worker in the Colorado Rockies front office, community relations department. So I bring all those experiences into my stories. Okay, so I'm going to read a little bit from Local Honey. I'm going to skip a little bit. So these are the white hippie parents who've adopted a black son. Gwen and Stephen Overby ceded control of the car radio to their son Hugh when he turned 12. Instead of the Boulder community radio station's African Roots or Bluegrass breakfast shows, Hugh chose the Denver hip-hop station. To Gwen, the DJs on it always seemed to be shouting, as if they were in a crowded club, trying to make themselves heard over the din. The people in the commercials spoke in affected street-smart accents, often above a background of sirens and other raucous sound effects. Gwen tolerated the station and still hoped this music would grow on her, because she was reluctant to become the sort of parent who would detest her child's music. She often thought about something she'd read in the pamphlets the adoption counselor pressed on her long ago. Occasionally, adult interracial adoptees moved far away, settled into a community of their own race, and denied their adoptive parents. Would he do that to them, their Hugh? She hoped learning to enjoy Hugh's favorite music would be one small way to prevent this. It was Gwen who heard the DJ announce that the Wu-Tang Clan would perform in Denver soon after Hugh's 14th birthday. And it was Gwen who observed how Hugh turned the radio up when the DJ said this, how he leaned forward and stared into it as if he could glean more information by scrutinizing the number on the display. And it was Gwen who helped hang the posters of the Wu-Tang Clan that papered her son's walls and let him use her credit card to download the Wu-Tang Clan's music. Despite this, Gwen would later claim that it had been Stephen's idea to accompany their son to the Wu-Tang concert. But they wouldn't be able to begin their argument about the genesis of this plan until after they had endured the show, pushed through the crowd to the exit, drove home to Boulder, and lay sleepless on their pillows, temples pounding to separate rhythms. Had they known anything about it, they would have tried something lighter first, like the Black Eyed Peas or the Roots. Had they known anything about it, they would have bought earplugs and worn steel-toed boots. Had they known anything about it, they would have realized that their attempt at bonding with Hugh would in fact accelerate the debonding from them that began the day he started kindergarten. When Hugh opened his birthday card and 3 tickets to the concert fell out, he beamed. Then Stephen said, "I thought we could all go together." "We?" Hugh asked. "Yeah, me, you, and Mom." Hugh's expression betrayed the tug of 2 contrary emotions. "Do you like the Wu-Tang Clan?" he asked cautiously. "Well, I haven't made up my mind about them yet," Stephen said. "But I know they're your favorite, so we wanted to give them a try." "Oh," Hugh said, "but can't I take Isaac and Cecil?" "You have to be 16 to go without a parent," Stephen said.
We went to a few concerts in our day, Gwen added. I don't remember why we ever stopped going. Gwen and Stephen mentioned the concert more often during the week leading up to it than Hugh did. Are you ready for the big show? Stephen asked every night before Hugh retreated to his bedroom. Hugh would shrug and smile and say, night, Mom, night, Dad. Gwen wondered if they were doing the right thing. One day that week, Gwen noticed her family reflected in the mirrored windows of a building that they were approaching and didn't recognize them for a minute. Who were these stooped, washed-out people with lank gray hair, looking every bit of their 52 years, wearing drab earth-toned t-shirts and faded denim? And what was this bright young man doing with them? Hugh was tall and striking, in dark indigo jeans and a crisp shirt so yellow that it taught those who beheld it what that color should be. He looked like a volunteer in some rehabilitation program that paired vital youths with burnt-out hippies. Just why, after all, had she stopped updating the frames of her glasses sometime during the waning Bush administration? Why had she let Stephen convince her to take advantage of the vision plan they had then by purchasing 3 identical pairs of a rather too large tortoiseshell frame that she had once liked? She wondered how long she had been committing these crimes of style and how Hugh had developed his own sense of fashion without her to guide him. Okay, and I'll stop there. Any questions? Okay, I will. Yes.
So how many in the collection are original and how many are reprints? Did you balance it? How do you decide what to?
They're all reprints. I mean, they were all in little tiny journals that I'm sure no one has read, so it's like they're new. I always think like the best way to hide any secrets you have is like in a literary journal. So I ordered them, I had to think about it a little bit. I ordered them, a lot of people who aren't familiar with the Denver Public Schools busing program, because it's unusual in the nation for how it sent white people across town. In addition, most busing programs would send black people elsewhere, but this one mixed everybody up. So a lot of people that aren't familiar with it don't understand it. So I had to order it in such a way as the stories that explained it and were about younger characters came first, and then it built along. And not all of them have to do with that, but that's one orienting principle I had. And then I also have like 3 short stories that I put in as like palette cleansers. This is not a scientific method. Like everyone always asks, how did you put your collection together? I'm like, I was, trying my best. So yeah, that's kind of the ideas I had. And then I was hoping the editor at Texas Review Press would like have some more suggestions of like better ways to order. He's like, this is good, this is fine. So I just went with that. Thanks. Yes.
When was that busing program in operation in Denver?
It lasted the entirety of my schooling. It started a few years, I started school in like 1981, but it started a few years before that. And I guess there was lots of violence before that. There was a busing at the bus depot, and there were fights and things, but all the whites had left by the time I was there. All the fights had died down, and so it was pretty chill. And so it went from 81, and then it was ended the year after I graduated high school in 1994.
So what neighborhood did you bus from?
So I grew up in southeast Denver, kind of near like Hamden and Monaco area, and I was first bused to Cheltenham Elementary, which is out by the old Mile High Stadium. When I was 6 years old, I rode the bus out there. And then the kids from that neighborhood, I think it's like Globeville or something, were bused to my southeast Denver neighborhood from 4th through 6th grade. Then I was bused to 5 Points Cole, 7th and 8th grade. That was an interesting time, like 1990, 1991. You guys that have been here for a while know what that was like. And then high school, I went to TJ, and it was kind of a mix of all different neighborhoods there. That's southeast Denver. Yeah. Any other questions? Oh, one more from Rachel, yeah. Yes, and I've been forgetting to repeat the question as I was so helpfully reminded. So if hopefully you understood the first two questions, but this question is, I incorporated a variety of different perspectives, and how did I figure out how to do that in the most respectful way? Well, that's something I think about a lot, because I've never been around, I never grew up around all white people. I grew up around all kinds of people. And so when I started to write stories, I just naturally need everybody in it. That's a story to me, that's a party to me. Like, I wouldn't want to read or be anywhere that's not like that. But we don't want to take other people's stories. We don't want to claim them. And so how do you do that? So you think about it every step of the way. In this book, I mostly use the perspective of a white character in those situations. But I'm careful, I never want to make the non-white characters be just foils for the white character. They have agency, they can take control. Usually it is the perspective character that ends up being the fool, and usually it's the other characters that take control of the narrative, and there's awkwardness. But I'm just glad that they're together and trying, and if the awkwardness ensues, that's what happens, but at least they're trying to commune. Yeah. Any other questions? Thank you.
Have you ever been to a Wu-Tang concert? Yeah? Me too. All right, thank you to all the collaborators. Can we get one more round of applause? Some really great stories and poetry, very interesting. Thank you to Book Bar for hosting this reading series. Thank you to Colorado Book Awards entrants, selectors, judges, and volunteers, and to Colorado Humanities and Center for the Book staff. We hope you'll join us at the Ellie Calkins Opera House Studio Loft on June 25th at 4:30 p.m. That's June 25th at 4:30 for the Colorado Book Awards finalists celebration and winners announcement, which includes brief readings by the winners and a reception. To secure your ticket or learn more, please visit coloradohumanities.org. I missed a note at the beginning that I was supposed to give myself a little bit more of a bio, so for my own benefit, I'm Natasha Watts, that I write short stories and edit anthologies, but I also write books for teens about marching band under the name Tasha Christensen. So if that's something that anyone here is interested in, there's a little bit more about me. Anyway, I had to take the shameless self-promotion. Thank you so much for coming out to support Colorado writers in this wacky weather. Drive safe. We look forward to seeing you all at the rest of the readings and at the celebration.